All right, so let's look at our skeleton a little bit. This is the skeleton that resides with us here in Turner. It's been around a while. These are real human bones. So if this is real human bones, then this means that this is probably was a small woman or an adolescent. All right, so looking at the sternum, manubrium, corpus, you can see where the clavicles articulate with the manubrium at the clavicular facets. You see where the first and second ribs articulate with the manubrium, and you can see how they sort of are at the angle of the manubrium and the corpus. And in the skeleton, the brown here, this is the cartilaginous. This represents the cartilaginous portion. Probably since this is a real skeleton, the cartilaginous portion has long since rotted away, leaving only the bones. Coming around back, let's start up here where you have the cervical vertebrae. So cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and the coccyx, which is missing. So looking up at the cervical vertebrae, you have C1, this is the atlas. You can see that the skull is resting directly on the atlas. You have C2, and this is the axis. And if we sort of try to zoom in a little bit, hard to see, but there's a wire up here. You can see that wire. That wire is wrapped around the odontoid and is sort of securing these things together. But normally the skull would rotate. As the skull rotates, the atlas rotates on the axis. Moving down from the cervical vertebrae, you can see that the thoracic vertebrae get a little bit bigger, and most notably, you can see that the ribs are attached to the thoracic vertebrae. If I try to get up here where we can see, let's go up here to the first rib. So you can see that the rib comes around. There's the angle of the rib, courses around. The tubercle articulates with the first thoracic vertebrae, T1, at the transverse process of that first thoracic vertebrae. And as we noted earlier, the head of the rib continues to curl in to articulate with the corpus of the thoracic vertebrae itself. From behind, you can see that the ribs curl around, and when they reach the vertebral column, they curl anteriorly to articulate with the corpus of the thoracic vertebrae. So moving down to the lumbar vertebrae. So you can see that compared to the lumbars, if we look at these guys right here, the cervical vertebrae are tiny. Thoracic vertebrae start to get bigger, and the lumbars are chunky, as my daughter would say. They're big. And the purpose of the the purpose of the lumbar vertebrae is to be big and support all the weight of the upper body and anything that you're carrying with your arms, because that weight is going to be distributed here. And if this was a real person, you would see the spinal cord would be coursing up through the vertebral foramen, where in this cadaver there is a steel rod coursing up between them. But if we come laterally, you can see these spaces between the vertebrae. Those are the intervertebral foramina. Moving on down, here's the sacrum. Sacrum is the medial bone of the pelvic girdle. And the coccyx would be here below that, and that would be your tailbone. So don't forget your numbers: 7, 12, 5, 5, 5.